So, welcome. I appreciate everybody who has joined us tonight and has logged in. This is our first roundtable webinar. The reason that we're calling it a roundtable is because we want people to be able to participate and be involved. I was a little feeling burned out from webinars and thought, well, we have these webinars and we have these conversations, and then they're great conversations, but then we don't feel like they go anywhere. It's great information exchanges very often, but I thought we would do something a little different tonight. We want to start these webinar series. We'll do this every month with a different focus group. Tonight, our special interest group is law enforcement. Next month, it's going to be on healthcare providers, and we will continue these each month with a different focus. But each time we do one of these roundtables, it's going to be up to the discussants and the participants to set the way forward. I felt like I don't have to be the deciding factor in everything. It's peer support, it's reciprocal. Everybody should have a voice in what we're doing and how we're running Whistleblowers of America. So we thought this is everybody's opportunity to contribute and to be involved. So that is what we're doing. Of course, on our website, you'll find a lot of information at whistleblowersofamerica.org. I believe that's how most of you found out about this tonight or signed up. But we also, we try to keep everything as available and open as possible. So this will be my one pitch to ask you to also donate, that when you're on our website, that even if it's $5 or $10, every little bit helps us put things like this together. Zoom is not free, recordings are not free, websites are not free. So anytime you guys can help us, we really appreciate any donations you can make, big and small. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're going to record these. We will post them. We'll create some pages. But now I want to turn this over to our discussants who are going to lead us through. So just, no, I'll let them introduce themselves. What the heck? So I'm going to start with Tim, now that we know your audio is working.
Right.
Why don't you?
And to make sure as well. Right.
So why don't you say hello, introduce yourself, and then we'll have everybody introduce the panel, and then we'll talk about, you know, what it is you want for law enforcement whistleblowers. So go ahead.
Sure. So I'm Tim Petoskey. I should say Nene Wibishkahong and Dejnakas, which is my name is to be a man or to become a man of the rolling thunder. It's not polite to not introduce myself in a proper way, so everybody knows my real name. I am a retired street cop. I am soon to be retired from the Army Reserve. I am or was until the 19th of December, a 1811 special agent for the Department of Veterans Affairs Police Service. I've been a whistleblower since 2011, actually probably about 2010. I've been very methodical in my whistleblowing activities. So I think maybe part of the reason why Jackie invited me here was because I've walked the dog as a layperson in every process from MSPB to OSC to OAWP to arbitration with unions and whatnot. So the question was posed, you know, what does it mean? What does being a whistleblower mean to me? And my response to that, it was actually echoed by kind of my partner in crime, if you will, at the VA, a man named Joe Murphy, who is the retired union president for Federal Protective Services. And Joe and I looked at each other one night when things had gotten bad. And I said, Joe, what do you want to do? And almost simultaneously, we said, I am my brother's keeper, right? Referencing that line, of course, from the Old Testament, but it has a place nowadays that's a little bit different to the military, and it's usually followed with, am I my brother's keeper? Well, F with him and find out, right? But it's a two-way street. It's not just we have each other's back. It's am I going to stop my brother from running off a cliff, right? Bob made an awesome point when we were talking earlier about how, nobody wants to armchair quarterback another cop, and nor should they, right? And I think the difference needs to be clear that what we're talking about is keeping our brother, right? Shooting a back azimuth, knowing where we're going, not armchair quarterbacking somebody who made a decision that they had to make in the moment. So that's what it means to me.
So Tim, thank you for that introduction. Mike, we made you go last time, so why don't you go next this time, and then we'll let Bobby say hello.
Oh, good. As long as I get to go before Bobby, that's really what matters. So my name is Mike Sommer. I am an FBI whistleblower, and I investigated public corruption in New Orleans, which is where I still live, and I investigated a district attorney who was a sexual predator. The federal prosecutors on the case essentially had a conflict of interest and favored this sexual predator DA. I blew the whistle twice. First time in 2013, reported this conflict to the Inspector General, to the Justice Department, and they basically swept it under the rug. And then when we continued the case, we ended up finding that this DA had victimized 22 women, had permission to charge him with racketeering and a whole host of other, serious crimes. They pled him down to a 3-year maximum sentence, harassing one witness. And what also really angered me was that they covered up all of the sexual misconduct, or virtually all of the sexual misconduct that we had uncovered from the public record. So I insisted on sending a letter to the judge who was presiding over the case. I did that under the First Amendment because there are no whistleblower protections for FBI agents to notify courts of wrongdoing. And so the FBI decided to suspend my security clearance. And that way they could evade judicial review of the First Amendment question, at least so far. And also they suspended me indefinitely without pay, while I was also prevented from having any other job. And so I've sued. I've gotten to the Court of Appeals where I lost. They held that there's no review of security clearance issues, or frankly any review of constitutional claims by a federal employee who isn't covered by the Federal Civil Service Reform Act, and which includes the entire FBI and a lot of other federal employees as well. So I've asked the Supreme Court to review it, and hopefully they will grant that petition in March. In the meantime, I've started my own nonprofit, Accountability FBI, and I focus on, I'm a lawyer, so I can do my own legal work. And so I try to help other FBI whistleblowers take cases where there may be potential constitutional rights of federal or FBI employees that we can try to set precedent, and then FOIA, just try to get records out. As far as, what I would like to see for whistleblowers, I really I think the infrastructure and the law needs to be changed to make sure that whistleblowers at all levels can have meaningful protections where they can speak out about wrongdoing and hold the people accountable who retaliate against them.
Okay, thank you. And Bobby.
Good evening, everybody. Mike is such a well speaker, right? To follow up. So I am Bobby Lediger. I'm ex-U.S. Navy. I did 7 years in the Navy as a Master at Arms and a military police investigator instructor. I then went on to the U.S. Marshal Service. I was a Deputy U.S. Marshal for well over 10 years, and then was promoted to Supervisory Deputy U.S. Marshal. I did 24 years and 10 months with the Marshal Service. And with 2 months before my retirement, I was terminated for conduct unbecoming, the catch-all. The reason for that was for my act of whistleblowing, whereas I defended a subordinate who was a U.S. Army veteran, a gay female, who was being sexually harassed, bullied, She was actually assaulted by another officer, and she brought it to my attention, and I ran it up the chain of command. And doing so, the men that harassed and assaulted this young woman, because I didn't defend them, I broke the blue wall and went against them. And they even admit that in their interviews. It got so bad that those men, while the leadership of my agency decided that the complaints the young lady made were not going to be investigated by internal affairs. They were going to be investigated by themselves. They were going to select a person from within the division to investigate these allegations. And we all know where that went. They said I was a bad supervisor and the young lady was the reason for the harassment. So it eventually did wind up with internal affairs. And then these men who harassed this young lady, after knowing me for 5 to 10 years, felt the need to come forward after the first investigation of themselves and say that I was a racist, a drug addict, a drug dealer, I stole money, you know, all of it. Mm-hmm. So I went up against the leadership, called them out, and the leadership empowered internal affairs to come after me. And when that happens, you know, it's everything against you. So I was terminated. I have no union. Like we all say, we're federal agents, we're 1811s. We have that silly FLEOA, which sucks. So you have to go out and get private attorneys, and it's very expensive, but I've been very, very fortunate, very fortunate. You have a great family and friends that stand by you and support you, and they know the truth. So my whistleblowing starts with telling the truth, being a truth teller, and going to people like my chief and my wife and my family and my friends. And just recently in the last year or two, going to Mike Zoomer and asking him directly, read my paperwork, read my case, and tell me the truth. Am I the problem? Was it me? And you got to be able in your heart to take the truth. You got to listen to your lawyers. You got to have great lawyers, and you must stand up to them. And them being the unaccountable, evil slobs that forget where they come from. And you fight them and you fight them and you fight them. And you will win, because there's good people that will help you and will stand by your side. And that's what happened to me. If it wasn't for Mike Zoomer, who connected me with another person, I would not be able to tell you today that I did retire. I beat them at their own game. I used the government against the government, because those egotistical maniacs that come after you are not the smartest people on the planet. It's you fighting the fight that's smart by staying in it and wanting to win. So these discussions and us talking about it, we're all here to help each other and get through it, because we're all truth tellers. We all have integrity and we're all honest and good people. So I hope my experiences can help somebody else, and ask away. I love answering any of these questions that come at me. Thanks, Jackie. Thank you for doing this.
No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you kind of opening this up by sharing a little bit about your stories and sort of setting the stage for police officer or law enforcement whistleblowing. I think what I want to transition us to as we talk more about what we want to accomplish tonight is to think about, so what do we want to see for police officer whistleblowing? What is the way forward? And what are the ways or resources that we can share with each other? what is it that you would want Whistleblowers of America to do, and what kind of plans, projects, things can we do in the future? So I know I've seen some things in the chat, and I know that the folks from the Lamplighter Project are here. So I was going to ask if somebody could volunteer to discuss the Lamplighter Project, and then I know I've seen some hands up and I've seen some questions in the chat, and we'll transition to that, and hopefully these guys will help lead a discussion. So who is here from Lamplighter? I see Sarah, Jeremiah. Paul, do I need to promote somebody to talk? Oh, I see. I have to allow people. Oh, yeah. Okay, I found Sarah. Let's see, Jeremiah. Allowed to talk. Okay, so, yep, I'm turning your mics on. If you want to turn on your cameras, please join us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Just one moment. Yeah, so my name is Jeremiah Johnson. I'm the founder and executive director of Lamplighter Project. We're a law enforcement whistleblower organization. And our approach to increase whistleblowing activity is in law enforcement and policing is really threefold. We're seeking to remove barriers to reporting. And the most well-known police whistleblower, Frank Serpico, he didn't start out by going to the media. He did what a lot of us in policing do. We go through the chain of command, right? So he attempted to bring corruption to the direct attention of his supervisors in the New York City Police Department. And at the Knapp Commission, Serpico later testified that he was made to feel that he had burdened his superiors with an unwanted task. So we're trying to come up with ways to reduce the friction and the danger to reporting misconduct. Secondly, we're working to prevent whistleblower retaliation in policing. We really believe that safeguards have to be in place to protect the good officers from the bad. And finally, we want to see ethical officers elevated in their organizations and communities, instead of what so often happens now is where they're marginalized and they're pushed out. There's a lot of talk about the legitimacy crisis in policing, and we believe that whistleblowers can play an important role in re-legitimizing policing. So Lamplighter Project, we've been privileged to engage with law enforcement whistleblowers from all over the country. And interestingly, the issues which lead officers to blow the whistle, they can be really quite diverse, right? Everything from ticket quotas to excessive force, different types of misconduct, right? But what's really strikingly uniform are the patterns of retaliation we see, which officers experience for speaking up. And so we could talk a little bit about that, but I think it's really ironic that when good officers tell the truth and they do come forward, they get disciplined for, say, delaying reporting, or they get outright accused of untruthfulness, which can be used to terminate or decertify the officer. So sometimes we talk about the playbook that exists in policing between organizations. I mean, we have 18,000 plus police departments in the United States, but what we see time and time again is, the truth tellers that Bobby was talking about, the way that they're treated and retaliated against is eerily similar. So I think when we talk about peer support, and this will just be my my last comment here, but if you spend any time in policing or law enforcement, there's the whole idea of the blue family, right? Your brother and sister officers. But when you do come forward and you do expose misconduct, especially outside of the organization and in some public fashion, that family evaporates overnight. So I think for many whistleblowers, they realize that the blue family is a lie, and that's where peer support, I think, is so important in policing, because you can find other people who are cops. You know, cops only trust other cops, and I think you can learn a lot from each other, especially those whistleblowers who've walked that whistleblower journey ahead of you, and you can learn from their experience and avoid some of the same missteps. So I think there's a real opportunity for those elder whistleblowers to help people who are just starting out, because even right now there's some patrol officer and sitting in the dark in their patrol car contemplating disclosing something, and as people in this space, we need to be there for them.
Jeremiah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know Tim and I were looking at each other when you mentioned more senior experienced. I don't think you said old, but so we appreciate that. So, and if Sarah, did you want to add anything? I don't see your hand up, but if you wanted to join the conversation, I did unmute your mic. And I see Raymond Hicks has his hand up. I'm unmuting your mic. Ray has an amazing, incredible story as well. And so the thoughts on a way forward for police whistleblowers, Ray, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. I don't know if you can turn on your camera if you want to, but we are definitely listening. And all right, I appreciate that. I see Sarah is gonna defer to Jeremiah, who did do a great job, so thank you. Ray, can you unmute yourself? Let's see, can I? Ray, we asked to unmute. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put you on a panel. Ray, we can't hear you. All right. Ray? All right. So I don't know why. I'm going to ask Paul, who's working in the background here, to see if he can't figure out why we have set this up so that people could talk, and I don't know why it is not letting that happen the way we thought it was going to happen. So I think we have lots to discuss here. So I'm going to go back to Tim, and Tim and I've had lots of conversations. Yes, I can hear. Is that Ray?
Yes, this is Raymond. Good evening, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead, Ray.
Yes, good evening, everyone. First and foremost, it's been a difficult task, trying to join in. I've been trying to join in for the last maybe 20, 25 minutes. And for some reason, it disallowed me. So I'm actually in my car as we speak. But anyway, I just want to say, first and foremost, that I love each and every last one of you. I truly thank God for this platform, you, Ms. Garrett, and all the other gentlemen that's on. My name is Raymond Hicks. I'm a former deputy sheriff here in Broward County. And of course, I wrote the book titled, I'm Still Standing by Raymond Hicks. And it talks about me actually speaking out against corruption with my department, where I was working narcotics here in Broward County. and we were combating street level narcotics cell. They put me from the jail back in 1991, and they had me working sting operations. And of course, I went through the Crossover Academy in Palm Beach, and they began to use me in the streets. And I'm watching my colleagues plant drugs, take money, and be innocent offenders to the ground. And as a result of it, they came after me. They said, Ray, you can't work out here anymore. Working with the Drug Task Force, OCD, which is organized crime, and the cradle within 1,000 feet of a school, 3 years in the state penitentiary. And I said, okay, no problem. You know, if that's what y'all want to do. So of course, they put me back in the jail. And lo and behold, on June 15th, 2000, I go to work, I come home, and I slept for almost a couple hours. I got up to go work out, and I saw across the street that they were mounting up at the Citgo. And of course, I said, well, that must be the Drug Task Force or the SWAT team. And when they saw me, they all jumped in the vehicles. And I told the young man I was working out with, I said, let's go to the front of my yard, you know, see what's going on. So when I get to the front of my yard, 60 cops storm me at gunpoint from the Broward Sheriff Office. I said, what is this about? We got a warrant for your arrest. I said, for who arrest? They said, your arrest. I said, okay, what did I do? So this black guy named Ricky Clark, he was a sergeant. And he said, Ray, just calm down. I said, what do you mean calm down, Ricky? I said, you guys here in my house and you're telling me that you got a warrant for my arrest and you can't tell me what this is about? So they go in there, they rip up my home, and the Internal Affairs came to me and said, Mr. Hicks, we're gonna place you on suspension pending the outcome of this case. I said, what case? So I'm still asking Rob Shaw, he was the person who I spoke with. I said, Rob Shaw, what do you mean, what case is this? So they said, we can't discuss it right now. So they take me over to District 5, they booked me in over there, and then I kept asking questions. They later transported me to the city jail. So once I arrived at the city jail, the next morning, the marshal come, and I said, what's the marshal doing here? And they said, Ray, we're here to take you to court. I said, for what, man? I said, what did I do? Granted, I was a highly decorated officer. I was a Gold Cross recipient, Silver Cross recipient, 2-time deputy of the month. Never been in trouble in my entire life. And the marshal said, well, we're here to transport you to court. So they handcuffed me and shackled me. They put me in an unmarked cruiser, take me over to court. When I arrived there, the district attorney says, when Mr. Hicks is at work, he's in the top 10% of his department. But when he's not at work, he's into other curricular activity. And I said, I'm looking at my mother and my wife said, what are these people talking about, man? And she said that I went to various states. She proffered to the courts that I went to various states delivering 350 kilograms of cocaine that was equivalent to $750 million. And the judge said, you're not a flight risk, but you're a menace to society. I'm saying to myself, how could I be a menace to society? When in fact, you know, I put my life on the line each and every day while I was out there. And it's just a disgrace. They took something from me that I love. I grew up in a family where there was stabbing, cutting. My mother was shot. My dad went to prison. But I always remember as a young kid, about 8 or 9 years of age, how the cops pulled me aside and began to talk to me and tell me about law enforcement. And I said, if I didn't play professional football, I would go into law enforcement to make a difference. When I wore the uniform, anyone that knows me will tell you, I wore it with pride. I was one of the sharpest individuals that anyone would ever meet. And lo and behold, the judge said, well, we're going to detain you at the Federal Detention Center in Miami. I get to the Federal Detention Center, and of course, they treated me like I was the lowest scum on the face of this earth. They put me in a hole. They put me in solitary confinement in a hole. They call it the shoe for almost 5 months. 23 hours a day, 1 hour a day for recreation. And I guess they couldn't break me mentally. And they, this gentleman named Mr. Fernandez gave me a phone call to call my wife and kids. So I began to tell my wife what was going on. Of course, everything became so hysterical. They placed me down in general population. when I arrived down at GP, this black guy saw my picture paraded with newscast, says, "That's that effing cop." So one of the guys who knew me from the hood, where I grew up in poverty, he said, "Man, you know what that is? That's Big Hicks, man. He gonna thump, man. You tripping." And of course, there was 122 inmates in the unit where I was, and one officer. They all gathered around the door, and I went to go put my bedroll down, and I told the guy, I said, "You got a problem with me? Come on in here. We can handle this like men." And of course, he tried to rush me. The guy must have been about 6'3", 270. I was about 6'1 and a half, 290. And I literally tried to beat him to death. And I began to question God and said, "Lord, why me?"
I think we all go through those moments of the questioning, why me? I mean, whistleblowing is difficult, and I know your story is definitely more extreme than maybe some of the rest of us. I don't know everybody on here tonight, so I appreciate that you're sharing what happened to you and how hard that has been. So I'm gonna go back though to Tim, because I think what we really want to do tonight in the rest of the time we have is start to talk about, so we've talked about how hard this is. I've heard a couple of you mention family, and how hard it has been for some of your families. Where do we go from here? How do we help police officers, law enforcement officers, come together? How do we find different ways to support each other? And what is it that you want from us as an organization? So I know Tim and I've had some of these conversations before. So why don't you share some of your thoughts, and what do we do next?
Sure. I just want to say, because I got the mic for a second, Ray, you're a fucking rock star, brother. As far as I'm concerned, you're 10-8 and straight. And all those other guys down there, especially the list of folks that deserve the phrase Broward cowards, they can all hang, right? I started my career for the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department. I'm one of 5 protected witnesses that put Sheriff Morris in jail. I was lucky. I was a kid, wrong place, wrong time. And they got me out of Florida before any of that shit happened to me. But brother, but for the grace of God, go I. And I have mad respect for you. So, you know, you keep on doing you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. Having said that, yeah, I have some thoughts on it. In 2019, I testified to Congress. There was this whistleblower hit list that came out from the VA. I'm in the top 10. We haven't verified her yet if I'm the top cop or not, but that's, you know, they fired everybody else on the list. Well, except Jeremy Balzan's 20 something. So he's maybe a little bit down a little bit. But one of the things the VA said about me is they called me the ringleader, right? Daily Caller actually referred to us as the Serpicos of VA law enforcement. And the VA's, they're malicious, but they're not wrong. So I fielded a lot of these calls, especially from other VA police officers around the nation that are suffering this repetitive script. It's not just similar. You can put it down with tick boxes, right? And so things like, and I think Mike will be able to speak to a lot of this better than I can. As a layperson, I use generalized terms, but things like 18 U.S.C. 1001, right? Or Bivens, right? Or Giglio, right? These things they're a joke. They're a law and they're on the books. How many times have they been applied, right? How many, in fact, we just had a group of VA police officers last year that went Rodney King on this guy on video. It was in front of a magnetometer. The case went to the 5th District. 5th District said that they wouldn't grant the action because the fact pattern in their incident didn't exactly match the fact pattern in Bivens. It's cartoonish, right? And so at some point in time, the only group or organization of the 3 tiers of the American system of government is Congress. Congress has to come back and say, we're incredibly sorry. If you are guilty of this crime, you need to be charged with it. And if DAs, if they won't bring charges, here's the crime for which you've committed, right? And until we get to that point in American history, like we tend to do with these circles, where somebody comes along and says the buck stops here, right?
Right.
I would argue another point. I would argue, and again, Mike, fact check me here, but I would argue that whistleblowers you are not protected in any way, shape, or form. You have recourse. There is legal recourse. That's true. That's not protection. An agency can harm you more than you can be repaired before you ever even initiate that aspect of recourse. So something has to be done or put into place where whistleblowers are actually protected. And what that might look like, there's all kinds of ways we could do it. An example is the cartoonish example of the Office of Accountability and Whistleblower Protection in the VA. They actually have the legal power to stop a termination action, right? Now they're cartoonish because what they do is they stop the termination action so that they make sure that the VA gets their case correct moving forward for termination. They don't actually help the employee. They use it as a pausing action so that they can then create a tougher case at MSPB, which is another factor. MSPB, 97% of the cases that go to MSPB get decided for the agency. That's not an over-exaggeration. They had to justify this before Congress, and their response to Congress was, well, that's because we get it right. 97% of the time, really. Now, that was all agencies, but you're telling me that the Department of Veterans Affairs gets anything right 97% of the time? They can't even retaliate against whistleblowers that effectively, right? So no, MSPB needs a reality check, and that's happened in history. In the 70s, there was a Supreme Court case that fell on their heads like a bag of hammers, and you know, history needs to come back to that again, right? Those reality checks need to happen. Giglio and Brady, right? If you get caught lying, if you get caught making a composite document, that investigation, anything of the kind, that then is used for malicious intent, you shouldn't be a cop again. If you're a liar, you shouldn't be able to do this job. I mean, it's just that simple. But again, go back and find out on the state side. You know, I'd argue Brady's probably a little more effective than Giglio. Again, Mike, you know, mea culpas if I'm mistaken, right? But there's a VA police chief, right?
Mike looks like he agrees with you.
Yeah, right. There's a VA police chief named Jeff Hader, and I believe he's still employed. He's a Brady cop out of Washington State. And I know Jeff from my time over on the east side in Union Gap. The VA hired him. I found out the VA hired him. I told the VA he can't be a cop. He's on the list, and he's a cop here in Washington to boot, right? Here's all the stuff from CJSTC. And what VA Central Office did was move him to California.
Mike, did you want to jump in on any of that, since your name has been taken in vain? And then I saw Jeremy in the chat. I asked him if he would want to comment as well. So we'll go to Mike, and then we'll involve Jeremy in this discussion.
Yeah. I think Tim's really hitting the nail on the head in a couple of different areas, and so it's and I think that's sort of on the federal level. I mean, Congress is
yes, that's
really
something.
Just such a major frustration, and it's and Bivens.
Yeah.
You know, I filed a Bivens action, and I thought I had a pretty good shot, and we just decided to drop it at the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court just hates Bivens. You know, I mean, and it's really, Congress could really fix this very, very quickly. And then I also I like to jokingly say that the Whistleblower Protection Act is actually the Whistleblower Retaliators Protection Act. Because it does, it just, as Tim said, it puts people through this usually administrative process, or if you go to court, either way, you know, the whistleblower is being retaliated against. And then before the administrative process or the court process catches up, they've already suffered, you know, severe damage. And so my theory is that if the way to go is to try to push for legislation where we could attack the retaliators individually. And that would kind of, you know, be basically like getting rid of Bivens, or creating what would be the equivalent of a 1983 claim for federal officials, and then also for, you know, specific to whistleblower retaliation. and that's one issue that I would think is worth exploration, which I don't have any
Mhm.
experience with, but is just 1983 claims in general for law enforcement, because state and local law enforcement, if they're retaliated against for, violation of the First Amendment rights, which wouldn't cover any internal whistleblowing, but it would cover actually going to the press. And so strangely enough, it would, the 1983 in some ways encourages going outside the department and going to the public, going to the press, which is, I think, worse, for the department.
Mhm.
So, and that's, 1983 action, you can, sue for violations of your First Amendment rights against the individuals responsible for it.
Okay, and so thank you for that. I mean, I think legislation is one of those things where we can talk about what's a way forward. Jeremy.
Well, I know, Jackie, you were talking about the legislation, and I know we've been working on that very hard to
Mhm.
kind of balance it out. I think right now what I'm seeing is the balance is for the agency.
Mhm.
One thing with like FLEOA, I'm glad you brought it up, Robert. I'm running for the president for the VA agency president. That's one thing that I'm hearing on both. Half of them like the FLEOA attorney, he did great work for them. Other half, he screwed them. The problem I'm seeing is that he's taken on cases not just in the VA, but also on other agencies. So he's overwhelmed. It's still not an excuse. So I do get elected. That's one thing I do definitely want to start looking at, because I think with the VA alone, we need our own attorney just for the VA alone.
Mhm.
One man can't handle the cases. And also with FLEOA, I think with the pretty much like a country club. I think they need to start really getting serious on helping us on that avenue. But I think with Tim, me and Tim talking, we have putting the people in the right places. I think with I've dealt whistleblowing as even a state trooper as a highway patrol. So putting the people in the right places that will actually do something. I think the other thing too is fear. Your officers won't speak up because they're afraid. They see the whistleblower getting attacked and like, well, I don't want to be a part of that.
Exactly.
I don't know if that's going. Well, the other thing, I have a question from Mike. With the new Congress, they're very talking heavily on especially with the Republicans going after the FBI and trying to defend these whistleblowers. But we all know a Congress is a lot of talk. What is your take on that, Mike?
Yeah, I'm really worried that they're gonna bring these people out, and they're only bringing out the people that they want to bring out, and then they'll leave them swinging in the wind, because the FBI, we've been fighting. Well, I'm a newcomer to this, so relatively, a lot of groups have been fighting for improving FBI whistleblower protections for years, and it just never gets done. Probably the only person who's been consistent throughout is Senator Grassley. So I would love, I'm all in favor of investigating the FBI, investigate whoever, but let's come up with some legislation and let's come up with some protections.
Well, the other thing too is legislation is great, but no one is enforcing anything. Even on the state level, they won't enforce. For prime example, with the highway patrol, I exposed the lieutenant colonel who was second in charge of the highway patrol on ticket quotas and going after state troopers illegally, the whole 9 yards, and they only forced them to resign. It's the same pattern in the federal government. Just resign, get your pension, no problem.
Yeah, and so I think, and that's why my dream legislation would be to get damages from the retaliators, and then additional money for the whistleblower, because really, again, all of this legislation is useless if you don't have the representation that you need to to go through with it. And if you look at and I know I may, some people who may be private sector whistleblowers may be mad at me if I say, but if you look at the private sector whistleblower protections, as difficult as that is, you do see these large whistleblower awards. And I'm not saying that every whistleblower should get multi-million dollars, who's a state, local, or federal employee, but you have to have some sort of incentive for these law firms to take these cases. And so I think that's a big issue, because otherwise you're stuck with your FLEOA lawyer, you're stuck with, or if at the state and local level with the union attorney. And it's just, it really, you're right. I mean, the legislation isn't any good unless we can get the representation we need.
Talking to the lawyer firms, the issue that I've run into with a lot of attorneys is the agencies will just keep pushing it, to a later date game. And that's where if lawyers, not even just with whistleblowers, even with veterans trying to get their benefits, they're doing the same thing. So the lawyers are getting frustrated, and they're like, we don't want to take a case because it's going to take 10 years.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's their primary tactic is delay, because
delay, deny.
Yeah, exactly.
So Bobby, you mentioned though earlier that you worked with FLEOA and that you had a lawyer. Why don't we take a minute and have you talk a little bit about what you think went right for you, and how were they helpful, or who was the most helpful?
Well, I don't want to get into a long discussion about FLEOA, and I would definitely talk offline with Jeremy about it, because we'll agree and disagree. I did not have any positive backing from FLEOA. It was very unfortunate because the young lady I defended went to FLEOA because she was a member as well. And they had her complaint. And then two of the marshals involved with harassing her called FLEOA. And FLEOA went with those two guys and showed them her complaint. So she lost all protection, and attorney-client privilege went out the window. My win was that I have an attorney who is just amazing. He's from New York, and for Mike and Tim and I, we're federal. We don't deal with the state or the local level. I mean, federal process is a whole different animal, and it doesn't matter that it's the United States. It's one system. It's not. I was in Eastern New York, and I was going up against my headquarters in Arlington, Virginia, and I honestly believe that my lawyers are too smart. I think I know for a fact that they're smarter than general counsel, and general counsel for my agency is a bunch of morons, and they lie, and they cherry pick the word, the sentence, and the paragraphs of your interviews and your statements to put it into a write-up to make you look bad when you're not. But to go backwards again a little bit more was, we need congressional reform on this, but you know what? There's already laws and rules and policies in place, and they're not even followed. So I feel bad for the young generation coming forward, because you want to tell the truth, but the problem is the people that are in charge today are the bad people. And this younger generation is following them, and they're getting confused, and they don't know how to come out and be truth tellers and protect each other with good and bad intentions. I mean, it's all confusing, and it's horrible. And there needs to be better policing amongst ourselves. And when it fails at leadership, we have a big problem, and we're seeing that. And I support Senator Grassley. He knows my story. He knows my case. I mean, there's a lot of other politicians that are just complete tools, and they got to get voted. They're just zeros. And but that's with anywhere you go, and it doesn't matter what your political background is. We have problems on every aisle, and it has to get straightened out. And you can't lie. I mean, you're hurting people for no reason at all.
So I appreciate some of those thoughts and comments. So
Rob, Rob, I agree with you. I'm on you. That's why I want to make changes.
So I think, go ahead, Bobby.
It's not hard to make the changes. It's just making sure that people follow them and make it happen. I mean, it's simple. It's just right now, it's just conversations about that. And then you have to put it on paper and have it worked out with everybody else. And it can happen and it should happen.
So my question would be, as we start to get to the top of the hour here, I don't know if Zoom will kick us off or not. Is I did want to throw out the idea of, so where do we go from here? We set this up to be a roundtable. It can be a one and done. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. If you want to do this some more, we can set up a regular meeting with just police officers and keep this more open, so that you guys can sort of talk amongst yourselves. You can look at legislative issues, you can look at training, education issues, whatever you decide. I think Tim knows that I would certainly tap him and Bobby and Mike for their expertise in where we go from here. But I thought it would be sort of an interesting discussion. Lots of comments in the chat are welcome, but I thought that we could make some decisions or have some open discussion tonight about what's next. So what would you guys like to do next?
Ms. Garrett, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Hicks, go ahead.
One of the things, what have I actually got me through this entire process, as I mentioned to you, as well as Mr. Devine and Mr. Robert Ward, is my relationship with Christ. After I started drinking, which I never took a drink a day in my life, and it wasn't until I began to pray and just fast and just seek God, each and every day about the things that I was experiencing, what I was going through, because no one would listen. I mean, I went to the media and everybody else, and I tried to get someone to look into this situation, but it was to no avail. It's been 21 years now, and I've been reaching out via emails, telephone calls, letters, and everything else, trying to get someone to intervene, and it's been to no avail. And you ask yourself, how can a person lose? I lost everything, man, to the point where I couldn't even feed my family. I applied for food stamps and unemployment. I couldn't even get it. And to this day, we still struggle. But by the grace of God, I got a decent job in security. I'm working relentlessly hours, trying to take care of my family as well as my wife. But the only thing is that there is no accountability, ma'am. Every last one of those individuals that was involved in my situation, they was all promoted to a higher rank. Captain, lieutenant, detectives, lieutenant colonels, and you say to yourself, where's the transparency? I'm listening to these other brothers that's online. My heart goes out to each and every last one of you. And I think what really got me through this whole process is I said, God is using me to be an example and a testament to someone else. And as hard as it is, to go through these situations, to be accused of crimes, not once, but 3 times I've been arrested, and I beat them all 3 times. I mean, Miss Gary, you know my story, and it's, it's just, it's a shame, and it's a disgrace that nobody seemed to want it. And like I just heard the other gentleman say, people are reluctant to even come forth and speak about these issues because they feel that there's going to be some form of retaliation. And that's why a lot of people, they sit back and they watch these things happen. But to be honest with you, I watched my father beat my mother to a pulp. And this woman is only like 5 foot, maybe 4'11", no more than 5 foot, 130 pounds. And I stood up to him, and I felt compelled to say, man, what you guys are doing is wrong, man. I didn't sign up for this, and that's the problem in law enforcement. To this day, I still love law enforcement. It was my life. It did a lot for me and my family. There's a lot of great men and women that put the uniform on, that get out there to make a difference and set the tone and the precedent. But in the same token, these clandestines that wear the uniform and the badge and belittle, degrade people, I don't care if it's me, my wife, my kids, my mom, or whoever. If I go out there and make my bed hard, I got to lie down in it, man. And I think it's a shame how these people are able to do the things that they've done to me and these other gentlemen that I've actually went on the web and looked up. And I'm saying to myself, how is it that they continue to do this stuff and there's no accountability? That's the
Well, I
problem,
think we're
man.
all, yeah, I think we're all asking those kinds of questions. I mean, I think everyone on here has probably had a perpetrator that was not held accountable. And I hear you, and we see that over and over and over again. I mean, that's the hard part. That's definitely part of the struggle. I love what you said about prayer, and your spirituality, I think, has been amazing for your case. I have had some conversations with some chaplains, and we are working on, I think that will be sort of another thing that we'll look at and do maybe in a later roundtable this year. But I want to come back to Tim and see sort of what, as we close up this session tonight, what do you think should be our next steps?
Well, I think, you know, as was said, your perseverance is key. When I started this back in 2011, people didn't even know the VA had police. And by people, I mean, you know, folks at MSPB, the Office of Special Counsel. I used to have to educate them that, no, yes, I am actually a cop. Yes, I do actually have arrest authority. Yes, I am actually a federal agent. And then I could get to the gross malfeasance, the incompetence, the cancer that is VA police. And then it was so cartoonish, they didn't believe me, and nor should they. It was that radical. So over the last decade now, I had a congressional rep. I don't think this guy, he was an aide. I don't think he couldn't have been more than 20. And he and I were talking on the phone, and he cut me off as I was trying to educate him. And he's like, I know 38 USC 902. I know. I'm like, whoa, wait a second, you know. And I think that's part of the perseverance. As we move forward, sometimes we don't see it. It's, you know, people, including myself, sometimes we tend to forget that the oceans and streams of this world are made up of single drops of rain, right? And that's the perseverance that we have to do as we move forward. We have to continue doing what we're doing because integrity demands it. We have to face ourselves in the mirror every morning. And these sorts of roundtables, getting the information out, continuing our cases, knowing that those cases may fail. There are no magic bullets. Do the case, walk the dog, take the hit, suck it up, move on, embrace the suck, go to the next thing, keep doing it. Don't let them make you stop, right? Mm-hmm. Never let them make you stop, right? You get hit, get back up, right? Next thing, and keep going and keep going and keep going. Reach out to your brothers. When you lose your case and you're done and you got no place to go, reach out to that next cop, find out what that next cop is doing. You know, the soldier to the left and to the right of you, how can you help them? How can you move their case forward? Will you take a section of your case and take that loss so that you can facilitate somebody else's case to move forward? And the only way we can do that is through coordination like this, right? Through talking, finding out where everybody is, what they're doing across the nation, right?
Mm-hmm. Bobby, do you want to impart some last words and thoughts for what we should do next?
Sure. First, I'd like to say, Ray, my heart goes out to you. What a horrible story and experience you have. And if we connect, I would definitely help you as much as I can. As far as moving forward with this, I think this is the best thing in the world to do is talk. You have to have people out there that know and have the experience. I don't believe in medication. I'm not a religious person. I just, you got to fight it straight on. You know, that's it. I mean, I'll sit there and read some mottos, you know, and I live by, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. You know, Mike Tyson is a genius. And then you know what you do? You punch back and you kick the shit out of people. And then you move forward. You just cannot sit still. And to applaud Ray that you know, you picked it up, man. You had to go get a job. You got to provide for your family. And that's what I did. I went on unemployment. I went and got a job. I went and got a better job, you know, and I stayed in the fight. And you need lawyers. You need smart lawyers to help you. But then you need money. And you got to earn. You got to hope that your family is there for you and your friends are there for you. And I was very fortunate because I had all that. But you need to do things like this, and people need to trust one another and open up and accept the truth, because the truth hurts. And that's the only way you're going to be able to move forward. So talking about it helps. It helps a hell of a lot. So I hope this keeps going, and I'll
Okay.
participate anytime, Jackie. Thank you.
All right, you may be on the hook for that. So, and speaking of smart lawyers, we'll give Mike maybe the last word here, and then I am open to anybody who wants to email, stay involved, and we are recording this, and we will be posting this on our website. So, Mike, smart lawyer guy.
Man, I mean, that's nobody's ever called me that before. So, but anyway, it's no, I actually didn't practice law. I went back to the FBI after law school for a reason. But anyway, but here I am. So I'll do my best. I think just 3 areas, we talked about legislation and, and then as a lawyer, representation, that everybody does need a good lawyer. And it does, it takes resources. I mean, just trying to do my own case and trying to do the couple of cases that I've been able to do, because I'm not an experienced litigator. So I'm sort of learning as I go. It is really difficult. And it's, and I think it's important to have lawyers who are trying to take cases for the public interest instead of lining their pockets, and that's the really hard thing to find. And then I'll just kind of echo, similar to what Tim and Bobby said, which is that it's, the support, whether that's peer-to-peer support, whether that's spiritual, or whether that's professional. And I think I'm a big believer. So I was in the Marine Corps. I was Iraq War vet. I had PTSD. I've been going to the same psychologist for 12, 13 years, something like that. So it's and that's been just fantastic. And so, and then of course, finally, having family and friends who are going to support you. So I think those are the 3 issues to probably work on.
So I appreciate that. So I'm gonna close this out. Well, I'm gonna do a bit of a commercial for a second. I don't know if I can get this close enough or far enough away from the camera. This is my book. We just had this published. I know some of you already have it. The Psychosocial Impacts of Whistleblower Retaliation. The purpose of this book and some of my work is to do just what some of you were talking about, holding perpetrators accountable by winning suits for damages for emotional abuse, pain and suffering, mental anguish. I mean, I think the courts call it a couple of different things, but that's kind of my approach. For my next act will be to try to actually do just that and hold some of these wrongdoers, hold their feet to the fire, hold them accountable, and make them pay the people that they harmed.
Jackie,
So
I want to throw out 2 kudos if I can. Mike, I read your story, dude, and brother, it's like an episode of Law and Order. Damn, man, I'm seriously. And Bob, I have mad respect for any supervisor. There's a guy on the list here named John Glidewell. He was a VA chief, and he kind of did the same thing you did, where he had the testicular fortitude to stand up in that way, because I know where it is you're coming from in that regard. And they say it's a brave thing if you're not afraid. And I haven't seen any fear in your eyes, but I still think it was the bravest damn thing for you to stand up in the way you did. And I just want to applaud the both of you. Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
yeah, you guys are definitely my heroes. I know some of the folks that are online, although I don't know you all. So I'm excited that people have joined. I thank you, and I appreciate those that came on mic. And for those of you who've been sharing in the chat, thank you for contributing to this discussion. And I know there are more to come. We will definitely be sharing some of the resources that were discussed tonight. I have the link for Ray's book, and we'll share that with everybody as well, or any other resources that if you didn't mention it tonight, like we can share those. We'll put up the links for the Lamplighter Project, and then we will set a course or a path for a way forward. Paul is going to be a busy guy. So thank you all. I appreciate everybody who participated tonight. this is not the end of these sessions. This is the beginning. Hopefully we'll get our IT to work better next time. And our next roundtable will be in February. Will be on the healthcare issue. So if you are interested, anybody can join any session. So please stay tuned, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. So thank you everybody for participating. Thank you for my discussants. Love you guys so much. Much respect and gratitude. Have a good night. Enjoy your dinner.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Jack.